paint's dry, let's do the finger test. It's not picking up any paint from your canvas, and you're good to go. I am take a little bit of matte medium, and I'm going to put it in one of our little spots there. And what the matte medium does is it allows you to mix just a little bit of color into it. With water, you don't want to do more than 25 or 30%. So it can mess up the binding, but that matte medium has the same basic acrylic structure. So you can go with far less pigment. Get some more. I'm just getting a few more sunbeams in here. Pull that one down a little further. You can even mix a little bit of water into that without really messing up the finish. Glide a little smoother. It's going to look a little bit lighter before it dries. It's because that matte medium is milky white while it's wet. Almost titanium white, but it'll dry transparent, so it won't be as noticeable. Let's go ahead and get a little bit more of that in here. I think I might have dipped in that titanium white by mistake. I guess we'll find out when it dries. Again, touch of water on your brush just to smooth it out some. If you get texture you don't want. In fact, this one, I feel like I've got to rework the overall shape of it because it really should be coming down the other way here. So get straight there. Work it out. Boil some trees in there too to help smooth that out. A lot of this will end up being hidden by the bigger trees, so we can a little more up here over some of these trees. Okay, clean my brush. I'm gonna take. Not you. You got paint on you. Not you. Oh, you have paint on you too. This one I haven't used yet. I think it's kind of pull along. Let's go ahead and get our microphone on. Pull along, smooth them out. Get rid of any sharp edges. I do have that one. It's a little brighter than the rest, so let's go ahead. Get a brush with just Tiny touch of that matte medium. Get a few more coming in here. Go ahead and vary up your color a little bit too. A little more yellow on some, a little more orange on some. It kind of depends on how many trees and whatnot you have in between. How much foliage might be blocking some of those sunbeams. All right. Take this clean on. Blend them out again. All right. Now we can go ahead and start adding some of our big trees that are really close to us. A little, about a 3/8 inch here. I'm going to take that red ochre for the first time. Mix that phthalo green in there. And get sort of a nice, deep, rich brown color. First one, gonna have almost comes up a little bit into the sun there. Not all the way through, because that light will kind of blend it. What's the word I'm looking for here? It'll overpower it. And another little one right here, maybe. Got one big old boy running all the way top to bottom here. Go ahead. When you're moving up and down, you don't want them perfectly straight. Trees don't grow perfectly straight. I twist, turn a little bit. And they get a little bent as they get old. Kind of like people. And you can pull from top to bottom or bottom to top. It doesn't really matter. Most of these trunks aren't going to be very visible anyway, because they'll have foliage on them. I'll take a slightly smaller brush now. This one's about a 1/4 inch. Into that same color. And putting a few big old limbs on these trees. And pull it flat through that paint. So you get nice and flat on your canvas. A little more water. Man, this dries really quick. Mix a little black in there. And again, if these aren't even, if you get little breaks in them, you can add a little water in the paint. And also they'll have the needles on them, so it doesn't matter if they're, most of those breaks will be covered up by our foliage. I did want to thicken that up a little bit. There's a few too many breaks in there for my taste. Thicken up the base of this tree a little bit. You don't really need as many of these branches showing through on the bottom. It's darker. And it really wouldn't show through as much to your eye anyway. Just because of the fact they're darker. Put bends and little breaks if you want. Okay. Now I need a liner brush. Going into that same mix again. Because we gotta, the little stems kind of branch off of these. Again, this one we're going to put more in the brightly lit part of the painting, so it won't stand out as much down here. In reality, it'll kind of be implied that they're there. And if you can get away with just implying it, really no need to take the time. Really no need to take the time to put them all in. There will be some over here eventually, but because that sun is so bright, I'll kind of push them. Like that sunlight is washing them out. So it'll be a slightly different color that we'll use for those. It'll be brighter. This one here is kind of our most visible tree, almost the most vocally important one. So that's why I'm putting more of these little thin branches on this one. Important using these brushes to pull very, very lightly so you don't get big globs of paint on her. Using that liner, the lighter that you pull, the thinner your line. Get a few down here. I'll get a few on this tree here. And might as well get a few over here. Again, not as many as we have on this big tall fella. We almost want this one to stand out more. I'm only doing a few on these fellas. Some of these branches might end up being bare even, or just have little growth of needles and the like at the end. Kind of fun to play around with and see. Alright, you know what? I think we need one right around here. Just a smaller one, right at the edge of the canvas. Okay. Now we can let's go ahead and start with, which one do we want to start with? I think I'm going to start with this one where I got to clean the handle. I got that broken edge there. I'm just going to mix some phthalo and orange. Mix a little yellow in there too. That might be a little too bright. Let's go with a little more orange. We want hits of green, but we don't want real bright green. All right. I'm going with our black. Oh, that is too thin. I don't want to use that one. I'll go ahead. There we are. Are you? Make sure it's clean. I'm going with our black first. Pretty much all black. So we're putting in the shadow areas on these limbs first. There we go. Just kind of cover that edge there a little bit as well. Let's go ahead and just pat some of that black stuff right into the bottom. leave that dark color on there for now. Start over here. Again, kind of going with the black for the shadow part of the needles, just so that the lighter color stands out more, just creates a little contrast. And just following the general shape of our branches here. And when you're putting in your shadow, you don't really have to worry too much about what tree is in front of one other one. You mainly create that separation with your highlights. You don't want to completely cover up your trunks and your branches and your stems. Leave a little of that showing through, but these are healthy trees. They have a lot of needles, so there won't be too much showing through. There might be a little too much there showing through. But it's also important to remember, leave some of that background. Leave some of that background showing through. I'm going to tighten that down again. I feel like I'm making too much noise. And we're working from one end of the canvas to the other, so that by the time we get to this tree, that paint will have dried. Or at least mostly dried, so we don't get a whole lot of blending. A little bit of blending is okay, but you don't want a whole lot. It's also good to thicken up these branches as you get closer to the base. Where older growth is, there's more surface area for needles and the leaves and the like. These are pretty much all like pine and spruce trees, so we're talking mainly needles. There's more surface area for them though, so they're going to be thicker towards the bottom. Plus, that darkness creates a nice contrast to our bright, sunny sky. Put a thick little crown up at the top here. That paint is too thick. Rather than scrape it off though, I'll just use it to reload the brush and automatically kind of thin her out. Easy fix, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Maybe that branch is about half barren. It's up to you. I just find it's good to have a little variation. Nothing in nature is truly uniform. By the way, say the more distant trees are going to look more uniform. So with that atmospheric scattering, they blend together a little bit. They're a little bit out of focus. But the closer you get, the more you realize that it ain't gonna be uniform. Okay, let's take a break from this tree because we want that paint to dry last, because that's gonna be our last tree. And let's go ahead and go on this little fellow over here. Start getting our leaves and the like in. Needles. Which I guess are kind of a leaf. Close anyway. Same basic form, function. We are putting some needles in there in areas where we didn't put the branches in, but that's part of the plan. Branches just kind of give us an idea about the shape. If the branches swing low, if they arch up. So it's okay to have some areas of your needles that don't necessarily have a branch to support them. So when you're looking at your evergreens, you don't really see a lot of that, a lot of the branches and the like, unless you're really up close. I'm going over here because I have a few areas where I can tell by the way the lights sit in the canvas that those leaves are really thick, and I don't want that. I want them a little thinner so that paint dries quicker. In fact, we've got a few up here we can kind of mush out as well. Then you can just take that paint that you're lifting off and use it to fill out the needles on some of those other trees. Punching some shade right at the bottom of these two. I don't want it almost all black on the bottom. In fact, a thicker brush here I can use. Kind of pull up. And go all the way across the bottom with that. Not too far up. Maybe the little bottom inch and a half or so. Maybe bring it up a little further the further you get from the sun. Kind of give it a nice round shape. Following the contour of your sky there. Okay. Scrape up just a little more down here. Almost make it look like foliage. One thing you might be noticing with the black is that as it dries, it actually lightens a little bit. Which I want to happen. It's black acrylic. Also, as it dries, it gets more of a, I don't want to say chalky, but a little bit more of a matte look to it. Whereas these other colors are going to be fairly glossy. The black is matte, which is a nice effect because it kind of pushes the shadows into the background. Or if you want a glossy black, the best thing you can do to make that is to mix. You can mix red and green and brown, like that phthalo red, and that burnt umber and a little brown. Make a nice black, but it'll also give you that same kind of level of gloss. But I don't want this black here to be glossy. I want it to kind of get a matte, almost a satin finish. So I'm not mixing my own black. Any way you can make the paint work for you, take advantage of it. It makes your process quicker, and it works. You'll probably tell by the way I'm working, I'm not trying to do fine art here. I spend 20 or 30 hours laboring over a single piece. I like to get them done anywhere from like 2 to 5 hours. I've had some that do take more. I think the piece that took me the longest was probably about, I want to say about 12 to 15 hours. I lose track. I lose track of time when I'm doing this. Which is one of the things that tells me that it's good for me to do. My cares just slip away. I suffer from anxiety and depression. But not when I'm painting. Not when I'm talking to you folks. It just brings me a stillness and a joy. I want all of you out there. I don't really give assignments, I guess, but I really hope that you find what brings you that stillness and that joy. And as long as you're not hurting yourself or others, do it whenever you can. It's okay to rest. It's okay to do things. I know we live here in America at least, where everything you do is judged by the money it puts in your pocket or your boss's pocket. But it is, I'm telling you, and more people are learning. It's okay to do things. Instead of putting money in your pocket, puts a little rest in your brain, puts a little joy in your heart. The nice thing about painting is that I can still put a little money in your pocket here and there. But that's not my main purpose for doing this. I just do this to unwind, bring myself a little happiness and joy, and hopefully bring some of you some happiness and joy. All right, let's go ahead. I think we got a tree close to the edge here where we're not really going to see its branches. Definitely not going to see its trunk. We just have a few little needles hanging out over the edge. Like maybe this one is our tree that's closest to the camera. We just can't really notice at first. So right now we're just doing those shadows. As soon as we get our highlights in, we'll be able to tell. I think this one's real close. We gotta make those needles. We gotta put a lot of them on these branches. Let's do a little. We got a little guy that's just kind of creeping in there a little bit. And we get some more at the bottom. Let's do one more. Let's pull that one out a little bit further. Let's do one more right down here.